The Detroit night was filled with summer heat and the smell of garbage from the bins when screams broke the silence on the 6th floor of 23 Candler Street. Mrs. Johnson, who had lived next door for 32 years, knew right away that this wasn't just a normal family fight. "I thought someone was just celebrating too loudly," she later told the patrol officers. "You know, when a baby is born, everyone screams. But then I heard that sound, like something burst, and a baby crying, so desperate." Detroit Police Department officers Jenkins and O'Connor arrived at the scene at 11:42 p.m. The door to apartment 614 was locked, but the sound of a baby crying could be heard through the thin walls. Jenkins, a father of 3, immediately sensed something was wrong. "Police! Open the door!" O'Connor shouted, pounding his fist on the peeling paint. No one answered. Only the crying grew more desperate, more piercing. Jenkins nodded to his partner, and they broke down the door. What they saw will remain etched in their memories forever. Kimora Jones lay on the floor of the small bedroom, her eyes staring at the ceiling in amazement, as if she couldn't believe what had happened. Blood spread in a dark stain under her head, mixing with amniotic fluid. Next to her, in the pool of blood, lay 2 newborn babies, still attached by the umbilical cord. Their tiny bodies trembled as they cried. "Oh my God!" Jenkins whispered, immediately pulling out his radio. "We need an ambulance, right away, and a detective. We have a murder here." Detective Marlene Walker arrived 47 minutes later. Tall, with graying temples and deep wrinkles around his eyes, he looked like a man who had seen too much. His brown eyes quickly scanned the crime scene, noting every detail. "What do we have?" he asked Jenkins, pulling on latex gloves. "Kimora Jones, 22 years old. Single gunshot wound to the head. Close range, judging by the gunpowder residue. She just gave birth to twins. The babies are alive and have been taken to the hospital. There are 3 witnesses in the apartment." Walker walked into the bedroom. The chaotic scene spoke volumes. The sheets were in a heap, covered not only with blood but other fluids as well. Wet towels, scissors, and a water bottle lay on the floor, all the signs of a home birth. And in the middle of it all was the body of a young woman. "Time of death?" Walker asked. "Preliminary estimate is between 11:10 and 11:30. Neighbors heard a gunshot around 11:35. Walker crouched down next to the body, carefully examining the wound. There was an entry hole in the left temple and traces of gunpowder on the skin. Very close range, possibly point blank. The killer either knew the victim or took her by surprise. "Where are the witnesses?" he asked, standing up. "In the living room. The victim's grandmother, her ex-boyfriend, and a female friend." Walker went into the living room. Essie Jones was sitting on a worn sofa with her arms wrapped around herself. Her gray hair was disheveled, and there were bloodstains on her robe. She was rocking back and forth, muttering something unintelligible. Nearby, on the floor, sat a young black man in jeans and a white t-shirt. His hands were shaking, and he was clearly trying to collect himself. Standing by the window was a thin woman in a medical uniform, her eyes red from crying. "I'm Detective Walker," he introduced himself. "I need to talk to each of you separately, but first, I want to get the big picture. What happened here?" Essie raised her head. Her eyes were empty, as if she were looking through him. "She just gave birth," whispered the old woman. "Just now. They were screaming. My great-grandchildren were screaming, and then there was a gunshot." "Where were you when the shot was fired?" Walker asked. I was in the bathroom. I was heating water. For the children. They needed a bath." Her voice trembled. "I heard Kimora laughing. She was so happy to have given birth to twins. And then..." The man on the floor suddenly stood up. It was Trey Baxter. Walker recognized him from the description. "I didn't do it," he shouted. "I was in the other room with the older children. They were scared when they heard their mother screaming. I tried to calm them down." "No one is accusing you, Mr. Baxter," Walker said calmly. "Not yet. I just want to understand what happened." The woman at the window sobbed. "I'm Charlene White. I was helping with the birth. I have medical training. I'm a nurse." She spoke quickly, nervously. "I was in the kitchen. I was heating water like Essie. We were both heating water. When I heard the shot, I ran straight to the bedroom. And what did you see? Kimura. Charlene covered her face with her hands. She was lying there, and the children. Oh my God, the children were lying in her blood. Walker made notes in his notebook. 3 witnesses, all claiming to have been in different places. Essie in the bathroom, Trey with the children, Charlene in the kitchen. But in a small apartment, everything could be heard. Did any of you hear an argument before the shot? He asked. Essie shook her head. Trey was silent, staring at the floor. Charlene lowered her hands. No, she said. Kimura was happy. She said that everything would finally be okay, that now that the children were born, she could start a new life. Walker wrote it down. Start a new life. From what? Or from whom? Where's the gun? He asked. The 3 of them looked at each other. What gun? Trey asked. The one that killed Kimura. It's not here. Silence fell. Walker watched each of them closely. Essie continued to rock back and forth. Trey clenched his fists. Charlene bit her lip. There shouldn't be any guns here, Essie finally said. We've never had guns in this house. Kimura was afraid of them. After what happened to her brother. What happened to her brother? Walker asked. He was shot 2 years ago, on the corner of Grapefield Street. Drug dealers. Since then, Kimura has been terrified of guns. Walker nodded. Another piece of the puzzle. Trey suddenly stood up. I have to go, he said, moving toward the door. Sit down, Mr. Baxter, Walker said firmly. No one is going anywhere until I'm done asking questions. But I have to. I have to pick up my kids from the hospital. Your grandmother will pick them up after we're done here. Trey sat back down, clearly nervous. Walker noticed him glancing constantly at the door, as if looking for a way to escape. Who knew Kimura was going to give birth at home? The detective asked. Only us, Charlene replied. She didn't want anyone else to know. She was afraid social services would take the children away. Why did she decide to give birth at home? Essie sighed. She had a bad experience in hospitals. With her first child, she was humiliated because she was too young and unmarried. With her third, well, she almost died because of medical negligence. She said she would never go to a hospital to give birth again. Walker walked around the living room, studying every detail. There were baby clothes laid out on the table, ready for the newborns. Kimura's phone was lying on the floor. The detective bent down and picked it up. Is this Kimura's phone? He asked. Yes, Essie replied. Walker tried to unlock it, but it was password protected. He put the phone in an evidence bag. Did anyone call her tonight? No, Charlene replied quickly. At least I don't remember. I don't remember either, Essie confirmed. Trey was silent. Walker wrote this down in his notebook. Perhaps the phone would hold the key to solving the case. He returned to the bedroom and carefully examined the crime scene once more. In the corner of the room, behind the dresser, lay an empty water bottle. On the floor were several drops of blood that didn't match the overall pattern of bleeding. They were too far from the body. Walker crouched down and studied the drops closely. They led to the window. He went to the window and examined the windowsill. Fresh handprints. Someone had leaned on the windowsill shortly before the murder. O'Connor, he called to the patrolman. Yes, detective? Check if there's a fire escape under this window. O'Connor went outside and returned a few minutes later. There is, detective, and it looks like someone recently climbed up it. The marks on the steps are still fresh. Walker frowned. So someone could have entered or exited through the window, but why didn't any of the witnesses mention it? He returned to the living room. The 3 people were still sitting there, lost in thought. Once again, Walker said, I want each of you to describe exactly where you were and what you were doing when the shot was fired. And please be as precise as possible. A lot may depend on this. Essie was the first to speak. Her voice was quiet but confident. I was in the bathroom. I was filling a basin with hot water. I leaned over the sink and turned on the tap. The water was cold, so I waited for the hot water to come out. Then I heard Kimura laughing. She was enjoying herself with the children. She said something like, "Look how beautiful they are." And then there was a gunshot. I immediately ran to the bedroom. Trey looked at the detective. I was in the nursery, more precisely, in the room where the older children sleep. Little Jalen was crying because he heard his mother screaming. I held him in my arms, trying to calm him down. I told him that everything was fine, that he would soon have a little brother and sister. When the shot rang out, I thought something had fallen. Maybe a chair or... I don't know. Charlene was the last one. I was in the kitchen. I was washing my hands in the sink. After giving birth, you have to wash your hands. I used antibacterial soap. I washed each finger thoroughly, under my nails. It's important when working with newborns. When I heard the shot, I didn't realize what it was at first. I thought Essie had dropped a pot or... Did you all hear Kimura laughing before the shot? Walker interrupted. All three nodded. And no one heard footsteps? Voices? The sound of a door opening? Silence. Walker slammed his notebook shut. There were too many inconsistencies in their stories, too many details that didn't add up. Someone was lying, or everyone was lying. I want each of you to stay here for a while, he said. I need to talk to each of you separately. What about the children? Essie asked. I need to be with the children. The children will be brought here as soon as the doctors have finished examining them. Until then, no one is leaving. Walker stepped out onto the balcony to think. Detroit spread out before him, the streetlights illuminating the empty streets. Somewhere below, music played and voices could be heard. It was a normal night in the city. But here, on the 6th floor, a murder had just been committed, and the killer was still nearby. The detective took out his phone and called the lab. I need a complete ballistics analysis, and check all 3 witnesses for gunpowder residue on their hands. Also check the fingerprints on the window, and send someone to check the fire escape. Returning to the apartment, Walker glanced once more at the 3 faces. Essie was looking out the window, Trey was drumming his fingers restlessly on his knee, and Charlene was biting her nails. They all looked guilty, but were they guilty of murder? Detective? Essie asked quietly. When can I bury my granddaughter? Soon, Mrs. Jones, but first I need to find the person who killed her. What about the children? What will happen to them? Social services will take care of that. But for now, they'll stay with you. Essie nodded, sniffling. Walker looked at his watch. It was 2:12 a.m. The night was just beginning, and the investigation was already getting complicated. He looked at the 3 witnesses again, and it seemed to him that each of them was hiding something important. Walker started with Charlene. He took her into the kitchen, away from the others. The woman sat on a stool, nervously adjusting her medical uniform. Tell me about the last minutes of the birth, the detective asked, turning on the tape recorder. In as much detail as possible. Charlene took a deep breath. The birth was surprisingly easy, especially for twins. The first baby was born at 11:15 p.m. a girl. Kimura cried with happiness. She said, "Finally, a girl." Charlene smiled through her tears. She had 5 boys and had always wanted a daughter. Go on. The second baby was born 7 minutes later, also a girl. Kimura laughed and said it was a miracle. She was so happy, detective. I've never seen her so joyful. She hugged the babies and kissed them. She told them, "My princesses, my little princesses." Who else was in the room at that moment? Essie. She was helping me with the children. She cut the umbilical cord and delivered the babies. She was also crying with joy. And Trey? He was in the nursery with the other children. Kimura didn't want him to see the birth. Why? Charlene paused. Things were complicated between them. They broke up 2 months ago. Kimura said he drank too much and could be aggressive. Did he hit her? I don't know for sure, but I saw bruises. She always said she fell or bumped into something. Walker wrote this down in his notebook. What happened after the second baby was born? Kimura was on cloud 9. She said everything would be different now, that she could get a better job, move to a nice neighborhood. Essie was crying and telling her how proud she was. I went to the kitchen to wash my hands, and Essie went to the bathroom to get some hot water. Kimura was alone with the kids. And you didn't hear anything until the shot? I heard her voice. She was talking to the children, singing them a lullaby, such a gentle song. And then suddenly, the shot. Charlene covered her face with her hands. I ran straight to the bedroom. Kimura was lying on the floor. The children were crying next to her, in her blood. It was horrible. Did you see anyone in the bedroom? No, no one. I grabbed the children and tried to calm them down. Essie came running in. She was screaming and fell to her knees next to Kimura. And Trey! He was the last to arrive. He ran out of the nursery. When he saw Kimura, he just stood there and stared, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Walker nodded. So far, everything matched the previous statements. One more question. You said you have medical training. Did you notice anything unusual about Kimura's behavior in the last few days? She was tense. She kept looking around. She said someone was following her. Who? She didn't say. But I think it was Trey. Next was Essie. The old woman sat down across from Walker, clutching the cup of tea the patrolman had brought her. Mrs. Jones, the detective began, I need you to tell me again what happened before the shot was fired. I already told you. I know, but now I need the details. Every little thing could be important. Essie sighed. Kimura gave birth to 2 girls. She was so happy. She was laughing and crying at the same time. I was helping Charlene. I held the babies while she cut the umbilical cord. And then what happened? Charlene said she needed to wash her hands. I went to the bathroom to get some hot water. Kimura was left alone. Alone with the babies? Yes. But you said you heard an argument. Essie froze. I mentioned an argument? Yes, Walker said firmly. The first time I asked you. The old woman lowered her head. Maybe I was mistaken. It all happened so fast. Mrs. Jones, Walker said sternly, this is a murder investigation. I need the truth. Essie looked up. There was pain and fear in her eyes. I heard voices, she admitted. When I was pouring water into the basin, Kimura was talking to someone. At first I thought she was talking to the children, but then the voice was angry. Whose voice? I don't know. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard the word money and the word last time. Was it Trey's voice? I'm not sure. Maybe. Why didn't you say anything about this before? Essie looked at him with tears in her eyes. I was afraid. Afraid that if it was Trey, what would happen to the children? He's their father. Walker paused, giving her time to calm down. What happened next? The voices stopped. I thought it was over. Then I heard a gunshot. I dropped the basin and ran to the bedroom. Kimura was already lying on the floor. Did you see anyone coming out of the bedroom? No, no one. Was the window open? Essie thought for a moment. Yes, I think so, but it's always open. The apartment was stuffy. Walker noted this. Essie was clearly hiding something, but he wasn't sure what. Trey was the last to speak. The young man sat on the edge of his chair, ready to jump up at any moment. Tell me why you came here, Mr. Baxter. I came to see the children, Trey replied quickly. Your children. But Kimura was giving birth. It's not the best time for visitors. Trey blushed. I know, but I was worried. They're my children too. Did Kimura know you were coming? No, I just showed up. At 11 o'clock? I work late, at the warehouse. My shift ends at 10:30. Walker took out his notebook. I need to check that. Give me your boss's contact information. Trey nervously licked his lips. I wasn't actually at work today. Where were you? At a friend's house, Marcus Jones, on Rowan Street. And what were you doing? Drinking beer, watching the game. The game? Basketball. Detroit against Chicago. Walker wrote down the name and address. Why did you really come here, Trey? The young man lowered his head. For money, he said quietly. Kimura was supposed to give me money. I've got problems. What kind of problems? I owe people, for drugs. They said if I didn't pay them back, how much do you owe? $500. And you thought a woman who just had a baby would give you $500? She got money from the government. For the children, I knew she had them. Walker banged his pen on the table. So you did talk to her? Trey froze. Yes, I talked to her, but I didn't kill her. When? After the babies were born, when everyone left. I went into the bedroom. I asked her for the money. And what did she say? She was angry. She said I was a pervert, that I came to a woman who had just given birth. She told me to leave. And you left? Yes, I left the bedroom and went to the nursery to calm the children down, and then I heard a gunshot. Do you have a gun, Trey? No, I've never owned a gun. Where were you when the shot was fired? In the nursery. I was holding Jalen. He was crying. There was a knock at the door. It was Officer O'Connor. Detective, we have the ballistics results. Walker stepped into the hallway. What's the latest? The shot was fired from a distance of about a foot, a .38 caliber. The bullet passed through the left temporal bone and lodged in the floor. A gun? Not yet, but there's something else. We checked all three of their hands for gunpowder residue. And? Charlene White has traces of gunpowder on her right hand. Walker frowned. Are you sure? Absolutely. Fresh traces. The detective returned to the apartment and looked at Charlene. She was sitting in the living room drinking tea and talking to Essie. Mrs. White, he called. I need to talk to you again. Charlene looked up. Fear flashed in her eyes. About what? The gunpowder residue on your hand. The room filled with tense silence. Charlene turned pale. I don't understand. There's gunpowder residue on your right hand. Fresh traces. That's impossible. Explain to me why you have gunpowder on your hand if you didn't fire a gun. Charlene remained silent, staring at her hands. I don't know. Walker took Kimura's phone out of the evidence bag. We checked her phone. The technology allows us to retrieve data even without a password. An hour before her death, Kimura received several messages. He showed the phone screen to Charlene, Essie, and Trey. These are messages from someone with a number we haven't identified yet. The first one, I know what you did. The second, you're going to pay for this. The third, today is the day. Oh my God, Essie whispered. Kimura didn't respond to these messages, Walker continued. But 20 minutes before she died, she texted someone. I'm going to tell everything, tonight, after I give birth. Charlene stood up. I don't know anything about this. Sit down, Mrs. White. I want a lawyer. Not until you're under arrest, Walker said. I'm just asking questions. He looked at his watch. 3:25. The time of death was around 11:30. That meant Kimura had died about 15 minutes after the second baby was born. Mrs. Jones, he said to Essie, are you absolutely sure the first baby was born at 11:15? Yes. I looked at the clock. I always write down the time of birth. And the second? At 11:22. Walker nodded. Everything added up. The babies were born, everyone congratulated each other. Then Charlene and Essie left. Trey went in to get the money. Kimura kicked him out, and a few minutes later she was killed. But who had the gun? And why was there gunpowder on Charlene's hands? There's something else, he said. We checked the fingerprints on the window. Besides Kimura's, there are others. Fresh ones. Everyone froze. Whose? Trey asked. We don't know yet. They're not in the database. But we'll compare them with all of your prints. Walker walked over to the window and looked at the fire escape again. Someone could have climbed up, entered through the window, fired the shots, and left the same way. But why? And why was there gunpowder on Charlene's hands? He looked again at the people sitting in front of him. Any one of them could be the killer. Every one of them was lying about something, but which one was lying about the murder? Detective, Essie whispered, when will this be over? I need to get to my children. Soon, Mrs. Jones. First, I need to figure out who killed your granddaughter. He glanced at his watch. 3:40. The night was dragging on, and the answer seemed increasingly elusive. Walker looked at his watch. 4:20. The sun would soon rise over Detroit, but in the sixth-floor apartment, time seemed to stand still. The detective made a decision. I want to conduct a reconstruction, he announced. Right here. Now. What? Charlene asked. You can't. I can, Walker said firmly. And I will. Each of you will stand in the same place you were at the time of the murder. I need to understand what really happened. Essie shook her head. I can't go back to that bedroom. I can't see. Mrs. Jones, the detective said gently. I understand how difficult this is, but it's the only way to find your granddaughter's killer. The old woman wiped away her tears. All right, I'll do it for Kimura. Walker began to assign people to their places. Essie went to the bathroom, Charlene to the kitchen, Trey to the nursery. He remained in the living room, watching. Each of you will do exactly what you were doing at that moment, he explained. Don't embellish, don't leave out any details. I want to see an accurate reconstruction. Charlene was first. She reluctantly went into the kitchen. I was washing my hands, she said, approaching the sink. Like this, thoroughly, with soap. Walker watched her movements. Charlene's hands trembled as she turned on the water. What did you hear from the bedroom? Kimura was talking to the children. She was singing to them. Charlene's voice grew quieter. She was singing the lullaby she always sang to her children. Essie stood in the bathroom, holding onto the edge of the sink. I was running the water, she said. Hot water for the children. The water was cold, so I waited. Did you hear voices coming from the bedroom? Walker asked. Essie froze. Yes. First Kimura was singing, then another voice came. Whose voice? I don't know. A man's. Low. Trey's voice came from the bedroom. I was holding Jalen. He was crying. I told him everything would be okay. Did you hear the conversation in the bedroom? Walker shouted. No! Jalen was screaming. I couldn't hear anything. Walker frowned. Everything could be heard in the small apartment. How could Trey not have heard what Essie heard? Okay, said the detective. Now, the moment when Trey entered the bedroom. Trey came out of the nursery and headed for the bedroom. His face was pale. I just wanted to ask about the money, he muttered, stopping at the door. Go inside, Walker ordered. Trey hesitated. Let's just imagine. No, go where Kimura was. The young man slowly entered the bedroom. Walker followed him. The body had already been removed, but bloodstains were still on the floor. Where exactly was she lying? The detective asked. There. Trey pointed to the corner of the room, next to the bed. Where were you standing? Here, by the door. And what did you say? I said, Kimura, I need money. And what did she say? She was angry. She told me to get out. She called me a weakling and a junkie. And then you left? Yes, I went back to the nursery. Walker looked at him intently. There were inconsistencies in Trey's story. Wait here, he said, and went into the living room. Charlene, he called. Come here. The woman reluctantly came out of the kitchen. Her face was pale. Her hands were still shaking. Show me how you entered the bedroom after the shot. Charlene slowly approached the bedroom door. When she saw Trey inside, she stopped. He shouldn't be here. Why not? Because he wasn't here when I ran in. So you entered an empty bedroom? Yes. I saw Kimura on the floor, grabbed the children. Where did Trey come from? He came running later, after me. Walker looked at Trey. Is that true? Yes. I stayed in the nursery at first. I wanted to calm Jalen down, but you said you ran straight to the bedroom. Trey remained silent, staring at the floor. Mrs. Jones, Walker called. Come here. Essie emerged from the bathroom, holding onto the walls. In what order did you all end up in the bedroom? I was the first, Essie said. I dropped the basin and ran. I saw Kimura and the children. Who was second? Charlene. She came right after me. And Trey? He was the last one. He stood in the doorway and just stared. Walker turned to Charlene. So you were in the bedroom with Essie before Trey got there? Yes. And what were you doing? I was trying to help the children, to see if they were breathing. I have medical training. And Essie? She was just screaming. She was holding Kimura's head in her lap. Walker walked over to the window. It was open, and a light breeze was blowing the curtains. Was this window open all night? Yes, Essie replied. It's always open. There's no air conditioning. Did any of you go to the window after the shot? Silence. I'm asking because there are fresh fingerprints on the windowsill and traces of blood. Charlene paled even more. I didn't... Detective, Trey said suddenly. Where's Charlene's bag? What bag? The medical bag. She brought it with her. It had gloves, scissors. Walker looked at Charlene. Where's your bag? I left it in the kitchen. Show me. They all went to the kitchen. There was a black sports bag on the table. Walker put on gloves and opened it. Inside were medical supplies, gloves, bandages, scissors, antiseptic. And at the bottom, wrapped in a towel, was a .38 caliber revolver. "Oh my God," Essie whispered. Charlene stepped back. "It's not mine. I don't know how it got there." "Charlene White," Walker said, "I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Kimora Jones." "No," the woman screamed. "I didn't kill her." "Then explain why there's gunpowder on your hands and the murder weapon in your bag." Charlene collapsed into a chair, covering her face with her hands. I didn't mean to." "What didn't you mean to do?" She raised her head. There were tears in her eyes, and something else. Pain, despair, and a strange sense of relief. "I didn't want her to be happy," Charlene whispered. "Not after everything she did to me." "What did she do to you?" She stole Trey from me." The room fell silent. Trey stared at Charlene with his mouth open. "What?" he gasped. "I loved you," Charlene said, looking at him through her tears. "I loved you for 5 years, even before you met her. We worked together. I thought we had a chance. And then Kimora came along and you forgot I existed." "Charlene?" "No!" she cried. "You don't understand! I did everything for you. I helped her because you asked me to. I helped with the kids because I wanted to be close to you. And I watched you slowly destroy your life because of her." "That's no excuse for murder," Walker said. "I know," Charlene sobbed. "But when she went into labor, when I saw how happy she was, I thought about all the years I'd wasted, all the opportunities I'd missed, and the moment everyone left the bedroom, I knew it was my chance." "Go on," the detective said calmly. "I brought the gun with me, a week ago. I thought I'd use it on myself. I couldn't stand seeing you together anymore. It was in my bag. When I went to the kitchen, I took it out. I went back to the bedroom when everyone left. Kimora was holding the children and smiling. She said, 'Everything will be different now.' And I just pulled the trigger." "And you threw the gun out the window?" "Yes. I ran to the window wanting to throw it onto the fire escape. But when I heard footsteps, I just shoved it back into my bag. Essie was crying on the floor. Trey stood motionless like a statue." "Charlene," he said quietly, "I didn't even know you." "Of course you didn't," she smiled bitterly. "You never noticed me. To you, I was just a friend who was always there." Walker called the patrol officers and pointed to Charlene. "Arrest her! Charge her with first-degree murder!" As the patrol officers handcuffed Charlene, she looked at Trey one last time. "I loved you," she whispered. "I always loved you." Trey stood silently, not knowing what to say. After Charlene was taken away, the apartment fell silent. Essie was still crying, clutching Kimora's photo to her chest. "What will happen to the children?" she asked. "Social services will help with custody," Walker said. "But for now, they're staying with you." "What about the twins?" "The doctors say they're healthy. They'll be discharged soon." Essie nodded. "7 children," she whispered. "How am I going to manage with 7 children?" "You have family," Walker said, "and neighbors, and social services. No one will leave you alone." Trey walked over to Essie and sat down beside her. "I'll help," he said quietly. "Kimora was the mother of my children. I should have been a better father." "What about the drugs?" asked Essie. "I'll quit, I promise. I'll go to rehab." Walker looked at them and thought about Charlene, about how love can turn into obsession and obsession into murder. How many lives had been destroyed that night? It wasn't just Kimora who had lost her future. 7 children were left without a mother. Charlene would spend the rest of her life in prison, all because of a love that went unnoticed. He left the apartment as the first rays of sunlight illuminated the streets of Detroit. The city was waking up. People were rushing to work. Children were running to school. Life went on as if nothing had happened. But Walker knew that in the 6th-floor apartment, life had changed forever. The twins grew up without a mother. Essie became a mother of 7 children. Trey got a second chance to become a better man. And Charlene paid the highest price for her unrequited love. The detective got into his car and turned on the radio. The announcer was reading the news, the usual street crimes, political scandals, weather forecast. But there was no mention of the murder of a young mother that had been solved that night. Walker thought about the report he would have to write, explaining to his superiors why the investigation had taken all night. But right now, he just wanted to go home, hug his wife, and be thankful that not all kinds of love turn into a destructive force. He pulled away, leaving behind the house where the tragedy had occurred. In the rearview mirror, he saw Essie's figure appear in the sixth-floor window. The old woman was looking at the rising sun, holding one of Kimura's children in her arms. Life went on. Despite everything,